Hello my friends. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how to preserve some fruit, some berries specifically, by making it into a mead. So you can see here I got some bees, so I'll take some honey from my bees and I'll take some Saskatoon berries from my trees and we'll make some Saskatoon mead, beekeeper style. I'll meet you, I'll take you up to the house. So the first thing you need to make some Saskatoon mead is some Saskatoons. So what I have here is 1 kilogram or approximately 2 1/4 pounds of freshly picked Saskatoons. All the stems and leaves and bugs removed, and they're washed and let drain fairly dry. So you don't want to just throw them into your ferment just like this. I mean, you could, but to make it more effective, I simply put a little bit at a time to start with, mashed them up, manually macerated them with a potato masher. Problem is, I did record this on video, but the whole I was whacking the side of the bowl and moving the table and the camera was shaking. It was a terrible video. So anyways, so what I did is I mashed them all up one layer at a time. Makes it a lot easier. It's a little trick. If you try just a bowl full of berries and just try mashing them, it's a little harder to do. If you pour a little bit in the bottom, mash that up, and then slowly add the rest as you're mashing. It's way easier, quicker, and you get a better mash. Anyways, so I did this to break up the berries a bit, release the juices. Now Saskatoon berries are very fibrous, so they are juicy, but it kind of congeals, and I had to add a little water to make it slurry, because I'll be using this Pectic Enzyme to release more of the juice and to break down the pectin in the fruit so that my final product will be clear. If you have fruit like apples or pears with a lot of pectin and you don't use this, you'll get a real cloudy, murky brew. But to use this, just crush up your fruit, whatever it is. If it's not very juicy, just add a little water. In this case, I just added the same spring water, bottled spring water that I'll be brewing with, fermenting with. Added about a quarter, maybe half a cup of water, and following the directions on the package, I added about half a teaspoon, which is more than I needed. I think if I worked it out, it would be like 2/10 of a teaspoon or 3/10 of a teaspoon, somewhere in there. So I added a half teaspoon. It's good to follow the directions. I added a little bit more. It shouldn't hurt nothing. It'll be fine. But directions are to let it sit an hour before you start fermenting with it. I've been given a lot of advice from experienced home brewers to let it sit overnight, or even 24 to 48 hours, some people have suggested. I haven't let it sit for 2 days like this, but in a refrigerator overnight, or even for a day while you're busy at work or doing something else, is perfectly fine. Nothing will happen. So I added a little bit of water. I added a quarter teaspoon of the Pectic Enzyme, and then I'm just going to cover this. You could cover it with a towel. I'm just going to cover it with some plastic film and put it in the fridge. After it's sat for a while and the Pectic Enzyme's done its magic, I'll bring you back and show you the rest of the process. Alright, so before I start mixing everything together, the berries are ready to go. I'm making a yeast starter. If I get this in the counter right, it should say 96.9 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what I warmed the water to. I believe that's 36.1, get this in the camera, degrees Celsius. as per manufacturer's instructions on the yeast. Comes on the back of the packages. It's a Lalvin yeast at least. This is K1-1116. It's good for fruits and flower flavors. So I added half a package of that for a 1 gallon batch, and I'm going to let this sit in the water that's been brought to proper temperature for about 20 minutes. And it'll come back down to a room temperature or the same temperature as the mead that's being added to. So we'll give the yeast a head start and upper hand over any wild yeast that are in the brew. So I'll grab my primary fermenter and the honey, and we'll start the mix while the yeast is getting ready. For this mead, I'll be using a 2 gallon primary fermenting bucket. I've labeled it with some painter's tape, which stays on when I wash it and sanitize it. I put the bottom of the tape at the level of 1 gallon, or what would fill a 1 gallon glass carboy, right to the top with very little head space. Of course, when I do a brew, it's going to be a little bit higher depending on what you're making. If it's just honey and water, I would only go about maybe an inch above the gallon line, and that will be your sediment from your yeast, cake, and anything that falls out of the honey. If you're adding fruits or whatever else, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my honey in and then fill with water to the 1 gallon mark, about thereabouts, maybe a little bit more, and then I'm going to add my fruit on top of that. That way when it's done fermenting, I should get a gallon of liquid out of here, no matter how much sediment or fruit is left over, without having to press the fruit or do anything fancy like that. So, and this is really handy too, this stays on. You can write on it and the writing washes off. I used gel pens. Gel pens wash right off, the sanitizer takes it off, tape stays on, it marks your level, and it's a good label, a reusable label. So a bucket's great. Okay, so a bucket's very easy to clean, very easy to sanitize, very easy to get your ingredients in and get everything out. I don't like doing my primary ferments in glass carboy, so you're not going to see that on this channel whatsoever. I don't see any use for it at all, because I want close to a gallon of final product as I can. And with this you can get even more, right? You'll have a surplus if you add more water than you need. Okay, so you can use a tea towel, a dishcloth to cover this. You can use a lid without a grommet. Put it down, seal it on 3 sides, just so it's not totally sealed. Some gas will find a way to escape, just so long as bugs and debris and such don't get into it. This one has a grommet, so I'll be using an airlock with it. Is this necessary in your primary fermentation? Absolutely not. But if you have it, use it. Why not? These are available at your local brew shop, very cheap. 2 gallon bucket for a 1 gallon brew. Now if all you have is a 5 gallon pail that you scooped up somewhere, you can use that too. Throw a rag on top. If you're only making 1 gallon, doesn't matter. It's good enough for the primary ferment. So the first thing I'm going to add to this is the honey. And what I have here is 3 pounds, or approximately 1,365, I think it weighed out to, or 70, I can't remember now, grams. So 1.3 kilograms, or 3 pounds of, this is fresh, raw, unfiltered, still has some wax in it. Fine wax. It went through one mesh filter, but it's considered unfiltered honey. It's from my own bees. It's my own honey. It's completely natural, organic. I don't use any pesticides or miticides. I use only organic treatments. So I'm going to pour all the honey in there, as much of it as I can out of here. I was warming up the water for the yeast starter. I warmed up a little extra water. which I should have brought over to the table. I'm just going to pour a little warm water that I had left over from making the yeast starter in here, and I'm going to get out as much got all that good honey out of there. Okay. So you got your, well, I guess I should mention too, everything you used here, the bucket, the airlock, the lid, anything that I'll be touching the mead or I'm using has been thoroughly cleaned, washed, you know, soap and water, and then sanitized. My favorite sanitizer is, of course, Star San. You're going to see this a lot with people making wine and mead. It's very useful. It's an acid sanitizer. It's also food safe and low dilutions. You don't want to be going crazy with it. It's not so great. Flavoring for your drinks. I don't think it would change the flavor or anything. I just don't like putting things in that are not necessary. So again, I put my honey in here. I already know where you either fill to the half level, or you can mark it where you like to have your level at for your primary ferment. There's a bottle of spring water. Just you know, everyday spring water. I accidentally used distilled water. I didn't have my glasses on. I grabbed one of these jugs. It was distilled water, and it still fermented good, even without yeast nutrients, which is something I won't be adding here either. Like I said, this is my honey. This is raw, unfiltered, unpasteurized, never been heated. Mix the honey and water together. Right, this is natural, organic, raw honey. It's got a little bit of the fine wax in there from the cappings. Okay, so the honey was fairly liquid. It's mixed pretty well. There's the Saskatoons that have sat overnight in the Pectic Enzyme slurry. Now I've already put the honey and water to the line of where a gallon should be. So this is extra. A lot of this is going to fall out as sediment. And every last bit of there. It's great to have spatulas. Rinse everything out with water. Get all the juices and goodness into your brew. So that's all there is to it. This sat in the pectic enzyme. Break down all the pectin. Release more of the juices. You want to thoroughly mix this during the primary ferment, at least the first, you know, half of it. When it starts getting going, there's no problem getting oxygen in there. The yeast will use the oxygen to help metabolize the sugars. Now if I was just using sugar and I was making Saskatoon wine, I'd of course I'd still use the same yeast, but I'd be adding yeast nutrients, as refined sugars or even a lot of store-bought honeys don't have the nutrition necessary for the yeast. That's why it was a big mistake. I made a batch with distilled water, so there are no minerals or anything in the water even for that yeast. Still worked though. You use raw, natural honey from a hive that hasn't been fed any sugar. It's all nectar and full of pollen, and yeah, nothing like it. Requires no additional, just like for the last 40,000 years people have been making mead. Doesn't require nutrition for the yeast to do its thing. All the nutrition is in there. Honey's one of the unfiltered, unpasteurized honey, raw honey made from the nectar of flowers, not from being fed sugar, is one of the healthiest foods you can eat. And that's just not me, but entire cultures believe that. So everything's mixed in here. We're going to take a hydrometer reading. To do that, I've got a just sanitizing my plastic graduated cylinder. I've got a food grade acid resistant stainless steel turkey baster. Any metal you use when you're doing fermenting, make sure it is food grade stainless steel, acid resistant of course. Same with the plastics you're using. You want food grade plastics that are acid resistant. You'll hear some people complaining on YouTube about leaving star sand in their plastic container and the plastic container is melting. That's not a problem with leaving star sand in plastic. That's a problem with what kind of plastic you're leaving your star sand sit in. If it's food grade plastic, it won't melt the plastic any more than if the bucket was full of pickles. It's not hydrochloric acid. Alright. And of course, I got my hydrometer. It's been sanitized. Turkey baster. Again, don't worry if you get oxygen in there, it's perfectly fine. You're just starting to brew. See any star sand on my hand, it's fine too. It's food safe. I try not to get it everywhere, but if you do, don't worry about it. Okay. And the Pectic Enzyme did its job and released everything from those berries. Looking like I'm getting a fairly high reading here. I am at 1.112. 1.112. Alright, I'm just going to check the charts and see what that gives me for expected alcohol by volume. What to expect, and if I want to add some more water. I don't think I want to add any more sugar. That's a fairly high reading, and I don't want to make rocket fuel, so I'll go check that and I'll be back in a second. Alright, consulting the chart, my reading hasn't changed. It is 1.112, and that should be, no, I've forgotten, somewhere between 14 and 14.5% maybe. More than 14, less than 15% alcohol. And that's good enough for me and close enough. These things aren't exact, but it's hard to show in the camera. It's hard to focus in on the lines. This was all sanitized, so the liquid is safe to put back in there. And it's also got sediment and stuff all over it, so I'm going to rinse this in the sink before putting it back in my sanitizer, therefore keeping my sanitizer clean, because you may have other projects you want to do with the sanitizer. you know, it's a good time to do everything at once. If you have anything you need racking over, or anything changing out, or whatever you're doing, just cleaning up your equipment. So the yeast is now sat for a while. Could sit longer. You'll see it start changing from little granules to more of a soft paste, and you'll get a floating island. You get some bubbles and all that too. I'm going to go ahead and put this right in, and again, I'm not putting any yeast nutrient in here. The only nutrition this yeast needs is in the honey. If it's natural honey from a beekeeper that doesn't feed sugar, then everything you need is in that honey, unless it's been pasteurized, because the heat will destroy a lot of the bioactive ingredients. But just the pollen alone that's in that honey has over 250 active bioactive ingredients in it. If that's not a smorgasbord for microorganisms, then I don't know what you're going to get out of a bag of potassium metasulfate or metasul bisulfate or whatever it is. Again, if I'm making wine, I'm just using refined sugar. I'm going to add yeast nutrient. I'm not going to blink, right? So you want to mix that in, give it one final mix. You don't have to go crazy. But you don't have to use an oxygen pump or something. It's got plenty of oxygen. Okay, and again, before this is day one, I'm going to record my specific gravity, of course, so I don't forget it. I'm going to write down my recipe, everything that was used. Okay, that's lid sealed on there. If you don't have a grommet in your lid and you don't have an airlock, just seal it maybe 5/6 of the way around or 3/4, just so that the lid's not up enough for fruit flies and other little critters to get in there, or dust and cat hair and whatever. Okay, so this one does have a grommet. We're using a 3-piece airlock. There's always people sharing pictures of their airlocks on Facebook with mold growing in them. That mold that's growing inside the airlocks, because these have to be assembled by hand. Rinse everything in your sanitizer, including your hands. Whenever you're handling food, which Mead wine is a food, you're going to ingest it. You need to follow safe food handling techniques. And the number one thing that contaminates food is people's hands. Number 2 is storage, right, and cross-contamination and such, improper storage, temperatures, etc. But the mold that grows on your cheese in the fridge is from your fingers, not from anything else. So, filling the airlock, I'm just going to use some good old Alberta pure vodka. It's not an endorsement or anything, it's this cheap vodka that's made here in Alberta where I live, so it's good enough for airlocks. There's a line on the airlock. I want to fill approximately to that line. You can use sanitizer water in the airlock also. I like the 3-piece airlocks because there's very little possibility of things getting sucked back down in. So if you do use sanitizer, you don't want to worry about, you won't have to worry about getting it all in your brew, and that's it. Start some yeast, throw all your ingredients together in a bucket. Stir it all up, take a gravity reading. Now if the gravity reading was too low, I would just add some more honey to bring it up to where I want it. Right? If the gravity reading is too high, if there's too much sugar, I just add some water. There's charts online available. So say you want to make 18% alcohol, you just figure out how much honey you need in the water, and away you go. You can take your readings, pretty accurate. It's not hard to do. But this is going to sit. Now this has a sealed lid, so unlike when I ferment in an open crock, I can't get in there and stir so easily. I'd have to remove the lid. Or you can just simply lift the whole thing and give it a good shaking, swirling around, right? And that will also help to punch the cap down. But you want to make sure that fruit gets thoroughly mixed back in each day so it doesn't dry out and grow anything on top. Especially if it's sealed like this where you can't see what's going on, right? But that's everything for today. I'll bring you back, maybe take the lid off and show you what's going on in a few days while I stir down and punch down the cap. But yeah, Saskatoon mead. Simple, simple, simple. Really the key to every mead is your honey. So, I mean, you can spend a lot of money on ingredients, fancy fruits, you know, imported this, imported that, and some vanilla from Madagascar and all that, and then cheap out on the honey. Not my advice. If you're going to spend any money on what you're brewing, make sure it's on the honey. Get to know your local beekeepers and get some of that honey when it comes out of the extractor. Because that's what this is, straight out of my own extractor, my own bees. I know where they've been, and they're clean. And just like that, it's 21 days later. So for the first week or so, I would lift the bucket up, give it a vigorous shaking, making sure I was mixing in all the fruit, whatever floats to the top. And then after that, maybe every other day, and it's been 21 days, I believe. So 21 or 22 days, so it's a little longer than I like to keep them in the primary, but it's sealed. The airlock should be fine. So before I go transferring it to the secondary, I'm going to take a hydrometer reading. So for this part, I'm going to need a cylinder or some sort of container that your hydrometer floats in. So it's my hydrometer and graduated cylinder thingy, which with no graduations, it's not necessary, right? You need a wine thief or something to take out the sample to test for the hydrometer. So both this and this will go into my bucket of star sand. I just have a half of a 5-gallon bucket filled with star sand and warm water. So again, star sand, I just follow the directions. Keep a bucket handy whenever I'm doing any thing with meads. So I'm going to take it out of the bucket. You're going to need something to put it in. This is where the 1-gallon glass carboy comes in handy. This is what I use them for secondaries and any further rackings after that for aging, bulk aging of a gallon. I'd use a 5-gallon if I was making a larger batch, of course. So with this also going to be using a bung with an airlock. I like the 3-piece airlocks, they're easy to clean. Here's the other 2 pieces. This also goes into the bucket. Just going to toss everything in there. And then to get the mead from the bucket to the carboy, I'm going to be using an auto-siphon. So this is the part that's going to go into the bucket. Attaches to a plunger which goes inside of it. Whoops, get it on camera here, sorry. Plunger goes in. Plunger is attached to, see, so you have the siphon part, the plunger in it, moves in and out. See if I can get it on here. Alright, so this is going to draw the liquid up through the hose. Got a good amount of hose. This is all going into the bucket of star sand. I'm just going to give it a few pumps, run the water through it. This is also going to be star sand. See if I can get this in here. Okay, here's my bucket of star sand. So I basically just tossed everything in here, floating in here. I have the auto-siphon, right? Just put it in, give it some pumps. It runs all the warm acid sanitizer through the tubing, making sure everything will be good to go when I need to use it. I'll just leave it in there for the moment. But I'm going to be using this. Alright, so it's all sanitized. Simple as that. Only takes 30 seconds of contact. All this foam is fine. Don't worry about the foam. Try to drain things off. Clean paper towel, you can wipe it down if you don't want any excess water dripping in anywhere. But yeah, that's all there is to it. Clean all your equipment, especially your hands. It's the most important equipment you have, because it touches everything. And it's very important to keep those clean. So I just keep that to the side while I'm working with meads or wines or preparing the equipment. Of course, after using the equipment, it's a good idea to wash it, rinse it very well, and put it away. You don't need to sanitize it when you put it away, but you know, I'll rinse or wash again before you use it, and then sanitize before you use it. So yeah, I'm going to open this up. I'm going to take a sample and see what the hydrometer says. So let's take a look. Should have probably pulled this up off camera. Shake the table and the camera. Oh, it smells wonderful. Smells fruity. See, I wash my hands, but there's an example of why you want to make sure your hands are clean. One of my fingers must have had some sort of dirt on it. The sanitizer water dripping off dirty on there. Just removing the airlock. Well, looks good. All this white floaty stuff on top is actually wax. I used unfiltered raw honey in this, had a little bit of wax still in it. So that may be a problem when I'm racking. Sometimes that wax can get caught in your racking cane in the auto-siphon, and then you get some air going through. So I'm going to just move this a little bit. Yeah, so you have your sanitized hydrometer and graduated cylinder, some form of wine thief. I'm just going to hold the graduated cylinder over the liquid. Whoops. You don't want to be getting oxygen into it at this point. That was sort of dumb, and I didn't stop once I realized it was dumb. Like driving over a curb and keep going forward. So yeah, you're going to expel the air out of your turkey baster before you plunge it into the liquid. Someone should have been here to tell me that, eh? Well, it's not floating yet, so that's a good sign. A piece of fruit stuck in it. It's going to float at all, let's see. Okay. Get it in the camera a little better. Right to the top. I don't have my glasses on, but it looks like it is 1.002 maybe? Very close to dry, if not finished. Any fermentation that's left to do will be done in the carboy with an airlock and won't be a problem. Shouldn't turn into a volcano or anything with that little sugar left. Perfectly safe to rack over. And it's good too, this was no yeast nutrient, just a raw honey. What was the starting alcohol? Was 1.112, and it is at 1.002. So what do I have here on the scale was approximately 14.5%. So that's pretty respectable. I'm just going to pour myself a taster. Just going to pour a little taste. I don't expect it to taste good or anything. The 14% alcohol, should be able to taste the alcohol. It's actually surprisingly smooth. Very tasty, actually. I like that. Alright, this was sanitized, so the liquid I drew out is perfectly fine to put back in, but I've already added a little more air than I'd like. But at this alcohol level, you know, maybe that little bit of air will push that yeast over that, you know, 2/10,000ths of a percentage point or whatever. So I'm going to put that aside and rinse that off before I sanitize it again, not to get stuff in my sanitizer water. So for this, you want it up high, put in the racking cane, and then you want whatever you're racking it into, in this case my glass carboy to be much lower. So if you can raise this up a little higher, then even the tabletop is good, and if you can put this on the floor is great. So I'm just going to set that up and do that, and bring you right back. Alright, I sanitized my carboy. That foam inside is alright. I put it upside down to drain most of it out there for, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. But if you do have a bunch of foam in there, when you put liquid in, it'll push it right up out of there. Bottles especially. Bottles are really good because they got a narrower neck, so it pushes up the foam and out. So it's really not too much of a problem. I mean, I try to minimize things I don't want in there, right? I mean, I'm not making Star Sand mead. I'm trying to make Saskatoon mead. So I'm just going to simply place this on the floor. Then I'm going to take this end, empty end, and I'm going to push it down into the bottle as far as it goes. So when the mead comes out, it's right at the bottom, not cascading down like a waterfall and getting water into it. I've turned over a stone crock upside down just to give me a little more height. When I'm racking over the mead. So it's really easy to do. You don't need two people to do rackings. It's easier with two people if you have bottles and they're far away from the siphon when you start, but there's ways around that too if you're by yourself. Don't be scared. Okay, so here's your siphon. This moves up and down. Has a cap on the bottom to keep it sucks in over the top of this cap, not straight from the bottom. It keeps out some of the nasty gunk in there. I'm just going to submerge it. It actually comes with a clip that clips on, and you can clip it to the side of the bucket if you like, but I don't know where I put it. I've had issues with this before with that fine, the fine wax in there gets inside stops a plunger from making a good seal, and you can get air bubbles. I thought I had damaged my auto-siphon or something, but it was just small bits of wax. If that happens and you start getting bubbling, just stop what you're doing and clean off the parts, the pieces inside, the wand that comes out. Okay, so it's sucking up, draining it. I don't know, I can't get this, see? There we go, we're getting some air bubbling action. Should not be happening. Okay, so before I go any further, I'm just going to tilt the bucket a bit and do that by putting something underneath it. Wasn't expecting that, but I just folded up a towel, a little hand cloth or whatever, so it sits up at an angle. If I can get the siphon started again, I can lift the bucket with my hand. This is what I was afraid of. All that fine wax in there. It's interfering, or something is. Clumps of crap. all stuck to the end of the siphon. Okay, so instead of trying to power our way through it, you're just going to get a bunch of air in your secondary. So I'm just going to take this apart and rinse it off. And re-sanitize it after I'm done rinsing it and put it back together. I will not make you go through the trouble of watching that, so I'll be right back. Alright, that was not the most fun racking experience I've had. I had to clean this twice as all the fruit in here kept getting caught in it. There's quite a bit of fruit if I had a spoon or something. But as you can see, I got most of the liquid out. All the berries swelled up and there's quite a bit of mush. It was all getting caught in the auto-siphon. But I managed to get a gallon of liquid. It's pretty cloudy right now. Has a little bit of that wax crap in there. But it's not the first time I've had little bits of wax, because I do use raw honey. But it will come out. I'll rack it once or twice more and it'll be just fine. But that's all there is to it. I was quite surprised how this tasted. I'm not going to taste it again, and I'm not going to drink what's left in the bucket here. So I'll probably strain it and throw the berries out there. The skunks will eat them and have a good time maybe. Yeah, okay, so from here I'm just going to replace the airlock. I got a little drying stand for bottles. I use it for letting the airlock and such drain off. Just going to grab a piece of paper towel. Okay, so when placing an airlock in a carboy, again, make sure your hands are very clean. You have the sanitizer handy. Make sure your hands are dipped in there. So it's a clean paper towel. So any liquid I'm wiping off is the sanitizer. So it's sanitizing the paper towel as it's removing. I shouldn't be leaving any debris that should cause a problem or anything. What I'm doing is making the surface, contact surface between the rubber stopper, the bung, and the hole, the bung hole. So when you're placing your bung in the bung hole, make sure it's dry. It's a little tip to keep them stuck in there. I keep seeing all kinds of contraptions and coat hangers, wires, and elastic bands or whatever. And another trick too is don't put in the airlock first, right? You have to take it all apart to clean it anyways. So don't put it back together. Put the bung in first. Right? This doesn't always work perfect. It will come back up a little bit. You'll have to mess with it over, in the next few hours, maybe even over. Take a look at it a day later or 2 days later, but it will form a seal. But you can get in there pretty good. Then take the sanitized airlock, which I'm touching with all my fingers and stuff. Now when you push in the airlock into there, it's going to expand the bung, and it should either help the bung to seal or force it to pop back out. Of course it's on video, so watch, it'll just pop right back out. But yeah, that's my little tricks. I don't have to hold it down with a rubber band or have them pop off on me unexpected or something. They generally stay in there pretty good if you do that. Make sure the surface is dry, the contact surface is dry. I'm going to push and twist it in there good. And if it's popping back up, maybe take it right out and dry it again. But this one seems to be cooperating at least, so that's good. Okay, so you have your sanitized airlock on there, your bung is secure. I'm just going to use spirit alcohol so as any fungus gnats or fruit flies or anything nasty getting in there, it will kill them. And whoops, I just poured it straight in. Don't do that. It's a 3-piece airlock. Put it together. I just poured vodka, I just fortified my mead. Alright, so don't pour the vodka straight in your mead. I didn't pour very much, but so there you go. Throw the airlock on here. Okay, I took a luggage tag. I labeled what it is and the date that that it went into the carboy. I also keep notes. I have a what would you call it? Like a notebook or a lab book, right? A hardcover notebook that I can get wet or whatever won't destroy the notes inside. So yeah, I just attach one of these luggage tags, and that way when I come back in 6 months I will know what it is. Doesn't get lost, no label to rip off or clean off. I find them really handy. But yeah, there you go. There's 1 gallon of Saskatoon mead, and it won't be ready for, well, if you want to drink it now you could. It didn't taste too bad actually, but I want it to clear nice. I want all this cloudiness to go. I'm going to have to rack it off this wax probably once or twice more. But maybe I'll do a follow-up video of a tasting or something. That's all there is to it. Really simple. Make your own mead or wine at home. It tastes good. Depending on your ingredients, it's also healthy for you. Much healthier than any commercial product. And it preserves, you know, your berries or your herbs or whatever you want to preserve on your homestead. It's a great addition to your pantry. Alright, there you have it. 1 gallon Saskatoon mead. Saskatoons picked off my trees and honey taken from my bees. Not much effort. It was very easy to make. Already tastes good after only 21 days. I'm really looking forward to this one. And I'm going to sit this in a cool, dark place, probably a closet. You can put a cardboard box over it, around it. You can wrap it with a towel. Just keep the sunlight off of it is good advice, I would say. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe. I'll be putting out more videos like this, or preserving food, making extracts, growing with biochar, organic gardening, natural beekeeping, you know, many different things that are helpful on a homestead or just being more self-sufficient wherever you live. But thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day wherever you are, whenever you watch this. Peace.